friends, and welcome once again to the Weekly High with LSD show. This week we have with us Kumar Bagrodia. He's the founder of Neuroleap, an applied neuroscience company that uses brain-computer interface technology to understand the brain, human brain better and recommend ways to enhance its abilities. Now, Kumar underscores the fact that Neuroleap has been developed in collaboration with companies that are backed by NASA, by DARPA. DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. It is part of the US Department of Defense. The NIH, which is the National Institutes of Health, and the US Army. Now, some parts of Neuroleap's technologies, according to Kumar, have also been registered with the US FDA. Of course, by now, you may already be asking yourself, what exactly is a brain-computer interface? What does it mean to you when people tinker with your brain? What is the cost? How do you judge the efficacy of the program? What are the limitations of the program? And if somebody takes data from your brain, how do you exactly deal with it? Yes, we will come to these questions in a short while. But as is the format of this particular show, we will first discuss the week's big developments, the tech developments. Now, the first one, of course, is that the government has laid down rules for social media and OTT platforms. So basically, it has brought all the digital media news platforms and the OTT platforms, the social media apps like WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, etc., under the purview of the IT Act. So what does it mean? Because Union Ravi Shankar Prasad, he essentially warned about the double standards of social media that they follow the world over. Like in Europe, they have a different standard. Here, they have a different standard. So he said that these double standards will not be acceptable. So therefore, the government said that they will implement the digital media ethics code relating to digital media and OTT platform. Now, that's obviously the overarching kind of stuff. These social media apps, the companies basically have 3 months of wiggle room. So there could be some tweaks if they talk to the government or whatever. We'll see how it is. But essentially, uh, let me ask you, Kumar, as a user, because Subbu and me, we have discussed this earlier also. I mean, we knew that this was coming, and even last week on the episode, we had N.S. Napanai, who is a cyber law expert and a Supreme Court lawyer. So she had already forewarned us that this was in the works. Uh, we have discussed this issue at length. You, as a user, how do you react to this kind of a news?
I think, Leslie, first of all, thank you for having me on this show. Hi, Sudhu.
Right.
I think as a user, it's a welcome move. Think of it, as parents or, even young adults, you would want to know what movie you're going to see. Yeah. Is it adult rated, UA for kids? Or when you switch on the television, you want to be able to see what programs are meant for children, for what audience, for what level, and all of that is regulated. So I don't see any reason why any other medium which is putting content out there for the average consumer should not have some level of regulation, whether it is self regulated or government regulated. That's a separate thing. But that regulation needs to be there so that we can choose and see, what is safe for our kids, what is not. And, we know better when we are, switching on our OTT. Today, it's not on the mobile phone alone, it's on your large television as well. Your Netflix or Amazon Prime Video, Hotstar, what have you, everything's connected. So it is just a different medium which needs to be regulated. So I'm all for it, right?
Okay, fair enough. Just two perspectives here. I mean, I know Subbu is itching to talk about this because he loves this subject very well. So the way, absolutely, I don't think there's any disagreement on the fact that even when the government said that it wants to stop mischief on the internet, so I don't think there should be two rules. And the whole question, I think even Subban maybe have discussed earlier also, that double standards really should not be acceptable. If social media apps and internet companies are following the law of the land in the European Union, there is no reason why they can't do similarly if it does not violate other provisions of the Constitution. Now here, basically, this is the way I see it. I'm not saying again that I'm right or something, but I see these guys have been actually caught in a catch-22 situation. For instance, if they break the encryption, which will be because if they have to trace the origin of the message, they will have to break the encryption rule. Breaking the encryption rules could also invite two types of problems. One, of course, the privacy violation, which is enshrined in the Constitution of India, and second is the security of issue, because there could be a lot of backdoor if they break strong encryption. But this is not new, because I think even Apple and FBI also in the US had a similar case, I think some 5 or 6 years back, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. So, so what are your thoughts?
So here are my thoughts. One is that I'm delighted that the honorable minister is, calling out the double standards of the social media platforms. Question is, who's going to call out the double standards of the honorable minister himself? Because you are now telling the social media companies that you have to have similar kind of rules that you are implementing in Europe. Great. And I think that's a great thing to do. But you're asking them to do that to achieve an objective which is diametrically opposite to what Europe wants to achieve. Europe wants you to, implement all these rules so that there is more freedom. You want them to implement all those rules so that there is less freedom. Today, all that the government is saying, why is the government doing all that? See, mischief, people spreading rumors, people creating law and order situations. That is a reality. Okay. But what is also a reality is that using these rules, what is to stop the government from looking into every single citizen's message? Using this as a medium, now a legal medium. Now this has been made, these the rules that have been amended have been called extended legislation. Okay, which means it's a law. From day before yesterday, it became law. Now, if you remember, the two girls who were arrested in Maharashtra, Shreya Singhal case,
Yeah.
right? All that they did was they posted something about a certain politician. And under 66A, they were told that no, it is seditious and you are going to jail. Supreme Court struck it down, and Supreme Court, for in its great wisdom, struck down the entire 66A itself, calling it ultra vires of Constitution. Now, here the issue is that you have made a law, okay, and you are now saying that I've got the legislative fiat to now start looking into every citizen's social behavior. To me, that's problematic. The second thing that is problematic to me is that, see, WhatsApp's contention that we'll have to break encryption is not tenable at all. The government is not telling them that we need to know what is in that message, because we know what is in that message.
You know the origin.
Yeah, all that the government is saying that you have to give me the originator. Oh, determining the originator, they don't have to break the encryption code at all. So if WhatsApp is saying that they're going to have to break the encryption, that is bullshit. They don't have to do that at all. But the issue is that by clubbing, so you have done two things. You have clubbed news media and the platform. Okay, first fundamental problem. Second problem is you have clubbed OTT with news media. So they are two different things. This is only for intermediaries. This is not for original content creators. So tomorrow, arguably, if Amazon comes up with an OTT show, which itself produces, then they are out of purview of this act, of the law, because this does not pertain to people who are originally creating content. On the other hand, if Amazon allows its platform to be used by some other producer, then Amazon in that case becomes an intermediary. So there are lots of legal issues. I think there is going to be a lot of legal challenges that are going to happen. I think there is going to be a tremendous amount of litigation that we're going to see out of this, right? But broadly, are the rules good for society? Yes, they are. Question is, what happens if the fence start eating the crops. If the policemen start looking into every single social media message that I see and flags it, then every time I have to go to the courts. These guys have said, no, no, we have our own regulatory mechanism. But your regulatory mechanism comprises people of yourself.
Correct.
You are not giving me an independent regulatory mechanism, right? So it is the government. So there, I remember there used to be a lovely saying when we were children: the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Great intentions, okay, wonderful intentions. But are they, are the steps that they're taking, are they tenable legally? There are going to be question marks there, challenges there. Are they going to be tenable from a citizen's freedom perspective? I'm not very sure. I'm not very sure.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important really to have these pulls and pressures, because you cannot take things lying down also. But I think here in India, especially, we need to question things. I mean, ostensibly, these moves are always good. And I said there's the right intention, but the point is the way you implement it, the way you roughshod it. And past experience has not given us the comfort level that these things will really be implemented with the kind of smoothness that we expected, or, without any kind of overbearing or overarching, overbearing kind of stuff from the government. But
Because the government has already demonstrated in the last few years, the government has already demonstrated its intent to be overbearing.
Yeah, so I think that's the catch 22 situation. But I guess we'll have to deal with it. But anyway, we deal with the text, the news developments. So currently, we are not really commenting on it, and
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll just see how it goes. We'll give the government a fair chance, because there are many good things that the government has done, creating a good ecosystem, creating a good payments ecosystem. Of course, I know that RBI has announced that they will create another digital payment system, which is going to I think, compete with the UPI. I do not know why on earth that's happening.
Reliance has announced it.
Yeah.
Okay. SBI had announced and the RBI said you can't do it. Now I think the Tatas and a few others are taking over the SBI payment system, which is going to compete with the UPI currently that is out there. So you're going to have, and which is a good thing, because to me, the more number of players come, competition increases, efficiency increases, consumer benefits.
Right.
So to me, that's a great development. The only question, therefore, is that, how are they going to be, stacked up? Are you going to put artificial barriers like they put in WhatsApp Pay that, you can't have more than 20 million now? Who's coming this figure of 20 million? Why not 30 million? Why not 100 million? Right?
Yeah.
So I think, but having said that, there are smart people in the government. I think this move of allowing multiple players for UPI is a great idea. Okay, with the way the digital payment system is exploding in India, it's a great thought. Question is that when you start growing, when the critical mass numbers are reached, then what happens? That is the only question I have.
And interestingly, I mean, on this whole WhatsApp debate, the whole OTT debate, I think Business Standard reported that the government itself is trying to introduce two apps, Samvad and I forget the names. I had those names. But Sandesh and Samvad. And this Sandesh, according to that report, is being developed by NIC. It is allowing encrypted messages, group chats, and access to government teams. And instead of emojis, they will have what are known as gimojis.
Not namojis.
Well. I can see Kumar smiling over there. Kumar, coming back to you, basically, I know we get as news people, we do get excited by developments that are more generic in nature, but not really that. But yes, it does cause a lot of stress, which is why I'm coming back to you now, and that's an area that you understand very well. So these are very post-COVID area. The post-COVID era has been very, very stressful with the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people have been working from home. And you seem to have this amazing product or service, whatever you want to call it, which is actually using technology and a lot of counseling. I believe I don't know whether it's counseling or not, but basically the brain-computer interface technology. So before I come to the specifics, why don't you tell our viewers what exactly are you doing in Neuraleap?
Sure. Um, so just to clarify, we don't do any counseling or any psychotherapy. Um, you know, we if you go back to our early days in school when we learned physics, primary physics, you would remember that the human body works on electrical energy, right? And the brain more so. There was a theory propagated a few decades ago worldwide that we start going towards depression or anxiety only because of a chemical imbalance. Now that has been disproven. It's a myth, right? Which just propagates on and on and on, so that more medicines can be sold. But think about it. Before the neurotransmitter, before those supposed chemicals take over, there has to be electrical transfer of energy from one end of the neuron to the other. Only then will you be able to make sense of anything else,
So
right?
basically, when before that, that means basically you're telling me that Munna Bhai MBBS, that chemical locha stuff is all bullshit.
Absolutely. Yes, you require certain chemicals to function properly, but those are not the building blocks, is what I'm trying to say. You
Yep.
need all those neurotransmitters, but that's not the story by itself, right? So if you want to understand brain function, you have to understand brain waves, so basically the electrical energy, right? So it is akin to saying that, listen, I don't need the ECG to figure out my heart, because everything is about chemistry. Yeah, yes, chemistry is important, but what about the electrical energy as well? So our human brain is about, on an average, 2% of our body weight, right? And it's about, let's say, about 1.5 kgs or so, right? But it consumes about one third of our energy. So it is the most expensive real estate in the planet, not just in our body. 2%.
Despite the fact that we don't use it much.
So what we are doing is we are using a brain-computer interface, like you mentioned, which is basically a bunch of sensors, hardware, software, algorithms, which non-invasively read your brain waves. Now, the BCI space, brain-computer interface space, is very wide. At one end of the spectrum, you've got somebody like Musk, who is coming up with Neuralink.
Neuralink.
He's
Neuralink.
saying he will have an invasive BCI, which will throw in sensors in the brain, right? And at the other end, there's somebody like us where we are using tech which is completely non-invasive. So we don't even put any magnetic waves or any electric current, no ultrasound, X-ray, nothing going into the brain. It's only reading data from the brain. That's about it, right? And
So
then,
you're reading data from the brain, you're not reading, you do not know what's going on in the mind, right?
yeah,
Okay.
that's a great clarification. So we are not dealing with the conscious mind, right? We are
So you
dealing.
can, if you can explain that difference, to our viewers, because I think that comfort level, because I think people cannot dissociate the fact that you are reading data from the brain, you're analyzing data from the brain, but you do not know what's going on in the mind, because my data is my mind, my memories are. So I want that if you
Sure.
can clarify to our users.
Sure. So, the first difference is to understand that the brain and mind are separate, right? The brain is hardware, in a very crude way. It's your mobile phone, right? The instrument itself. The mind is the software, in a way, right? In a very crude way, I'd say that. So the brain is just like any other organ, right? It's got its own way of functioning, and it's generating electrical energy. It uses electrical energy. Every thought, every attitude, every action, every emotion is a culmination of billions and billions of neurons which are firing in a millisecond in coherence for you to be able to blink, for you to be able to move your hand, right? And so that you have proper hand-eye coordination, right? So all of this is happening in a fraction of a second. The mind is transient. So you might be having a certain way of thinking, a certain approach, which can all the time change because that is your consciousness, right? What we are tracking is just a subconscious activity. And the way we are doing it is we are reading the data at very high speed. And to give you an example, we are reading the data at the speed of one reading every 32 milliseconds.
Okay.
1 millisecond is a thousandth of a second. Usually, it takes about 500 milliseconds, so half a second, for the brain to process external information,
Mhm.
right? So when we are doing 32 milliseconds, we are faster than an eye blink. We are faster than all of the conscious stuff coming to you. So it's really at the subconscious. It's really capturing who you are. You know, what is your base level in terms of your anxiety, your attention, your concentration, your short-term memory, your ability to have strong willpower, or your ability to get addicted or obsessive or compulsive about things. So there are several neural networks or neural pathways which neuroscientists over the last many decades have now researched and mapped. And they have a fairly good understanding to say that if these parts in the brain are producing this level of brain waves at these frequencies with that level of strength or power or lack of it thereof, which can usually point towards, let's say, high anxiety, or let's say an ability not to be able to control themselves in terms of addiction, or low memory, low attention, things like that. So
So who
that's
are these kind of people that are coming to you, and what are the kind of questions that they're asking you? Why are they coming to you? What do they want to? Do you tell them, okay, fine, it's because of the anxiety post-COVID? Are these senior executives from companies? Because others are kind of we're talking about enterprise technology typically. So do you have CXOs from companies coming to you and saying, okay, fine, I'm pretty stressful out here. I cannot function. My workforce is suffering or whatever. I'm just
Sure,
hypothetical.
sure. So we have two sets of clients, I would say, who come to us. One is people who are just curious, right? And many of them tend to be CXOs, and it's almost like a certain variety. I would say, these are people who are physically fit, who have already realized in the last 20, 30 years that physical fitness is important. So either they are running marathons or gymming or just doing yoga, meditation, and they're fit, right? And they eat right, they go on the right diets, all of that stuff. They take care of themselves. And they want to understand what next, right? They're also the people who understand that the brain is the last frontier, right? If they are able to have, let's say, better sleep or better attention, or a better response to stress and anxiety, or if they can improve their decision making process, whatever it is, they can actually achieve more in life. So these are the people who are coming from that perspective, who don't necessarily have a disorder or a problem, who just want to come in and understand themselves. The second variety, like you mentioned, are people who have an issue, right? Who are, let's say, facing the impact of long durations of stress or too much travel or anxiety, and who are either losing sleep or losing their cool easily, or are facing lack of attention or low energy, what have you. And they come in with that mindset to say, okay, there is a problem. Can I scientifically deal with it, right? Because just talking to somebody is not going to help my attention improve. Just talking to somebody is not going to help me get rid of, let's say, my addiction. I want to quit smoking, right? Or I want to improve my memory or enhance my decision making. Yes, I can talk to people and get more data points and get a sounding board and help make a decision, but my decision making ability will not change with it, right? So we have these two sort of broad sets. Most of our clients currently tend to be, promoters, owners, CXOs, chairmen, business heads, line managers, etc., who are sort of early adopters of tech, early adopters of anything new which they can use to enhance themselves or improve themselves. Yeah.
Subbu, as a founder, are you finding it exciting enough?
I'm finding it fascinating. I'm finding it fascinating. I mean, so here is the question, right? I have multiple questions. One, of course, is that is this some kind of alternative to the classical, uh, clinical psychology interventions, counseling interventions that people go through when they are in moments of stress, or they go through prolonged process or prolonged periods of stress. It could lead to, like you said, sleeplessness. It could lead to smoking and alcohol, and whatever that, all those things. So, is that position? Are you positioning yourself as some kind of an alternative to that?
I would say yes and no.
Mhm.
Yes, because we are able to deal with all of these issues which you mentioned and many more without, like I said, any meds or counseling.
Mhm.
No, because I think counseling has its place. So, and here is an important distinction. We've, India has moved sort of like a yo-yo. We've become like a pendulum when it comes to mental health. From an era where we just refuse to recognize it and even talk about it, we've come to an era now where just about everything is a mental health issue, which is not
Absolutely.
right. I mean, if somebody's had a bereavement or has lost their job or is in isolation because of COVID, you will have certain impact on your mood, your anxiety, etc. Is that a mental health issue? Certainly not, right? It is circumstantial, it is environmental, it is contextual. So,
But
unless
it could lead to a mental health issue.
it could lead to a mental health issue if not taken care of, right? So for example, if somebody was to say that, oh, I have a sleep disorder, but if you understand the context that this person is staying up and watching movies on OTT, binge watching every day, then perhaps it's not a sleep disorder. it's a
Absolutely.
it's an OCD which needs to be corrected so that he has time to sleep, right? So that's my sort of qualifier there to say that what is mental health, what requires some amount of counseling, and what can be done with counseling, what cannot be achieved with counseling.
No, you're right, Kumar, because many a times I find that, like you said, I like the description yo-yo, because there was a point in time when we never recognized that there is something called mental health issue.
Sure.
Now, at least in urban India, we seem to have swung completely the other way. You know, if I have a road rage, if I get into a fight on the road, then the next thing I'm told is that maybe you should go and talk to a counselor. No, that guy was cutting in front of me. You
Yes.
know, I would have just dhabbed him, even otherwise. So I think, and I think what is also getting a little concerning is that we are passing on the same, messages to our children. So now, when a child does badly at exams, he comes home, and before you can say anything, he says, "I'm under stress." No, no, you haven't studied. That's why you've done bad in the exams,
And that's why
right?
you are under stress.
Right? And then the whole the conversation goes around saying that he's under stress. You got to deal with him very carefully. Yes, I have to deal with him carefully, but I also have to tell him that, dude, you got to sit and study, and there are no compromises there. I can't tell him in a nice way. I've got to tell him in the way it has to be told. So I think somewhere we need to achieve the balance. The other question I had, Kumar, is that
Can I interject there for a
yeah,
minute?
yeah,
On this example you gave, if the child is unable to study, means he
yeah,
wants to study, he wants to put in 8 hours and study that day, but he's not able to pay attention, then we can
that
help,
is it.
because
Yeah,
then we can say that, okay, there is probably a dysregulation, in our parlance, a dysregulation in the attention network in the brain, right? We will never say this is ADHD. We don't use those labels which will make the matters worse, right? We don't want to label somebody saying you have attention deficit. We are very matter of fact saying, look, we've done the assessment, the attention network is a little dysregulated. So just as somebody goes and says, oh, I've got low hemoglobin, nothing to be stigmatized about that. You increase your hemoglobin. have the right kind of foods and exercise, and hemoglobin will go up. So similarly, with us, we say your attention network is dysregulated and we can help you correct it. But in the same example you mentioned, if it is not about the inability to pay attention, it is just, being truant, right? Where you don't have the right incentives or the disincentives in place to study or not to study, then like you said, you'll have to have that difficult conversation, or some difficult actions will have to be taken.
Difficult for the child, not for me.
Yeah, they could.
So
Yeah.
what has happened
And-
is
and
that
you know
now
that-
they made it difficult for me.
Yeah.
Correct. No, and you came up with another
The
good
question
example.
that I had-
I mean, on
Sorry.
the crashing into the road. No, I mean, I
Yeah.
remember Subbu talking about that person, crashing into another vehicle or something, and you getting angry about it, and that person saying that you need to see a psychiatrist or no. No, absolutely not. I do believe that there's something called righteous anger.
Exactly.
Justified anger. So that's pretty stupid to put everything on mental
No,
health.
my answer to him was that, I might have to see a psychiatrist, but you'll have to see the red light.
Absolutely.
I mean, you got a physical problem, damn it.
So, even there are gradients, right? I mean, depends on how much, of a
Road rage and all that kind of
how often
Yeah,
that